Well, good Tuesday evening, everybody. Taylor Plott here, and we got a lot to talk about on this forecast update. We got a big cool down expected next week across a good chunk of the United States, but we're also watching the chance of some more tropical activity coming up later on this week and into next week that could be impacting parts of the Gulf Coast area. Let's talk about the big cool down first, real quick. And what we'll be watching for is what's going on next week. And again, it's not a major like Arctic blast that we're expecting across parts of the area, but what we are expecting is a very big cool shot coming down, a lot of cool air that we hadn't seen across the eastern part of the United States in quite some time. It's been very warm over the past several weeks. So let's go through this forecast. This is the European ensemble, and what we're watching for is big areas of blue and green. That's going to be your temperature anomalies showing some cooler than average temperatures. Right now, that is currently across parts of the western United States. But as we get into next week, notice that a good chunk of the United States is going to be above average. So that's what we've been seeing over the past several weeks, and that will continue for the next several days. But watch what happens once we get into Wednesday and Thursday of next week. You start to see a lot more of those blues and greens moving into parts of the eastern United States. So this is when our big cool down is expected. We should see highs in the 40s and 50s for a good chunk of this area, and temperatures below freezing for a lot of places once you get into the nighttime hours on your Thursday and Friday. And this will continue for several days. So this is going to be our big cool shot that we've been waiting on, a big pattern change that's going to be coming in across the area. Now this is going to be all thanks to a trough of low pressure that will be moving through. So let me switch this over. Let me look at the upper air heights and look at the height anomalies. So this is that big trough that we're watching that will be moving in to the eastern United States once we get into the middle and latter part of next week. On top of this, we'll also have to watch for the chance at seeing some severe weather potential. That is something that we're going to be watching for once we get into parts of next week. Nothing is obviously set in stone because it's still very much it's beyond 7 days. So really the forecast, once you get that specific in regards to actual severe weather threats, is pretty low. But what we can gauge it off of is this powerful trough moving on through, but also the fact that there's going to be warmer temperatures ahead of it. So you're dealing with above average temperatures and then a big shot of cooler air coming in behind it. So that really sets the stage for the chance that there could be some strong or severe thunderstorms with this area low pressure moving on through once you get into the latter part of next week. Again, it's just something we're watching. It's nothing set in stone right now, but it is something that we'll be keeping a close eye on over the next several days. In regards to actual temperatures, let me flip this back over to the temperatures, and let me go into certain regions. Let's start with the northern plains. So lows will generally be down in the 20s, most likely for a good chunk of the northern plains. And once you get into the afternoon highs, I mean, it's 30s and 40s. So it's going to be pretty chilly across the northern plains, most likely once you get behind this front. For the northeast, a little bit of a different situation. Temperatures will still be in the 30s and 40s once you get into the morning hours, but there's a greater chance that you're probably just staying in the 40s and 50s for a good chunk of the day. So definitely on the cooler side, but there's really not a huge cool punch until you get into the weekend, I think. That's when that cooler air should start to filter in across parts of the New England area, most likely getting into the weekend as opposed to Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday. For the southeastern areas, most likely seeing temperatures on your Wednesday or Tuesday, still in the 60s and 70s, so above average. So that's when we could be watching for a stronger storm threat. Even on Wednesday, temperatures in the 60s. But watch when you get to Thursday. Thursday morning temperatures kind of generally in the 30s and 40s. Again, this is ensemble data, so this is probably going to change just a little bit, but it gives you a good idea of a roundabout temperature area once you get into Thursday and Friday. So Thursday afternoon, you could see highs generally in the 50s. I wouldn't be shocked if there's some 40s out there, but I think it's mainly in the 50s. And then you'll get your temperatures Friday morning probably down into the 30s. and then on Friday afternoon, still generally in the 50s, although there could be some 40s out there as well. So, again, it's a big cool down like we've been waiting for over the past several weeks. It just hasn't really happened yet. We've been dealing with a big ridge of high pressure that has kept things very much above average for this time of year across a good chunk of the United States. So that is a look at the big cool down, but what about tropics? Yes, we are watching what is now Invest 99L. This is down there in the Caribbean, and we'll be watching this over the next several days, and this will likely end up being our next tropical storm and hurricane once we get into later this week and into the weekend. But as to where it goes, it's still a bit uncertain. I want to be cautious on this because it's, as you see here with some of the ensemble guidance, it's kind of all over the place. So it's not shocking that we're seeing this kind of uncertainty in regards to where this will go because an actual enclosed center hasn't formed yet. But we can get a pretty good idea of how this might play out. And what it will likely do is it will likely take a little bit of time to get together and organized down in the Caribbean, but with a lot of warm water down there and low wind shear, this should quickly ramp up into a tropical storm and possibly even a hurricane relatively sooner rather than later. I don't think this is going to be, you're taking, a week to actually get a tropical system. I think this one happens a little bit quicker than what we've had in the past, but it wouldn't shock me if it took a little bit, but I don't think it will this time. So as for the ensemble data, you notice that it does kind of move to the west and kind of just sits here across parts of the Caribbean, and then eventually, according to some of the model guidance here, it kicks it off to the north and into parts of the Gulf of Mexico where it could impact parts of Florida or Cuba. But I don't think this is going to be a system that gets to the northern Gulf Coast. I don't think it impacts Louisiana, Mississippi, Alabama, or the Florida Panhandle because the way that the trough should be moving in once you get into the latter part of next week, it should start to feel that influence and the steering currents get moved around to where it would end up getting kicked to the northeast. So, again, Florida's definitely in play here, but it might not hit Florida. It might just go to Cuba and then immediately kick off to the northeast and go to the south of, become south of Florida. So, again, there's a lot of uncertainty here, but you do see that evidence in the model guidance here that there could be a tropical impact across the state of Florida once you get into parts of next week. Let's take a look at some of the deterministic models. This is just kind of your GFS and European model kind of single runs. Just kind of give you an idea of how this might play out. So let me go to the Gulf of Mexico and take a look at the precipitation. There it is right there. So this is just one model run off of the GFS. You see it has a very powerful hurricane coming up through the northern Caribbean and getting into the Gulf of Mexico. Again, this is just one model run, but I'm giving you kind of an idea of what we're watching for. And, I mean, this is hour 171, so we're not very far out when it comes to the forecast hour. Usually once you get past 200 hours, things get a lot more iffy than it is within 200 hours. So within that area, there's a good confidence that there's probably going to be something that is coming out of the Caribbean. Now, whether it's hitting Cuba right now or whether it's hitting the Yucatan Peninsula or like it shows here right in the middle, that's still kind of yet to be determined. But the idea that something here coming out of the Caribbean is a good likelihood at this point. Now, as it moves to the north, notice it eventually starts to move to the northeast, and in this model run, it gets making landfall just to the south of the Big Bend of Florida, and that would, with that model run, that would most likely be about a Category 2 hurricane if you look at just the pressure right there at about 968, so probably around a Category 2 hurricane according to just that model guidance right there. But again, that's just one model solution. What about the European model? Let's go back to the 12Z run. You notice how this one is kind of way down here, but it's a little bit further to the west as opposed to the 18. You see the 18Z, it had a little bit further to the east. But the 18Z Euro doesn't go out that far, so let's stick with the 12Z. You notice how it makes it go through the Yucatan Peninsula, which would be a better case scenario, most likely for parts of Florida, because it would actually have to go over land and then get back over water and try to get itself organized, reorganized again, while the water temperatures aren't as warm as they have been. So if it hits land early, I think it might be a better case for Florida if it does hit Florida. If it goes through in between Cuba and the Yucatan Peninsula like the GFS has, you're probably looking at a stronger hurricane at this point in time. But this is hour 198, so getting close to that 200-hour window. And the European, notice it goes just to the south of Fort Myers and impacts the southern part of Florida, kind of near the Miami area. And that's hour 204. So now we're kind of getting a little bit out there, but you see how it will eventually get the influence of that trough right here, and it will kick it to the northeast. So how far north it gets is kind of yet to be determined, but I think there's definitely a growing potential here that there could be a possible hurricane impact for parts of the Florida Peninsula. Again, where and how strong, we don't know yet, but according to the ensemble guidance and even the model guidance here, that's starting to kind of lock in on a situation that there should be a hurricane getting into the Gulf of Mexico that could impact parts of Florida. That's starting to get a little bit more on the confidence scale. But we have a ton of time to watch it. So this is not going to be a thing that, oh my gosh, it's happening tomorrow, so we don't really have a good idea of what exactly could happen. We have a lot of time to watch it. So the uncertainty, even though it's definitely on the lower side, I mean, we got a week, even more. This is going to be a next week system most likely. So like I said, it's not like this is happening tomorrow when we're very uncertain and people kind of get freaked out about that. No, we got a lot of time to watch this. So again, it could easily just stay in the Caribbean and move to the west and hit the Central America area. Could move up and hit Cuba and just get kicked out into the Atlantic and not hit Florida at all. Or it could get into the Gulf of Mexico and impact the Florida Peninsula. So that's all on the table here. So we'll have time to watch it over the next several days. So just keep it here for the latest update on that. That is your forecast update. A lot to talk about with that cool down, possible strong storms next week, and that hurricane that we just talked about, Invest 99L. A lot to watch over the next several days. So keep it here for the latest information. That's what I got for you guys this evening. Have a great evening. Stay safe out there, and I'll see you guys later on.